The cliche, laughter is born from suffering. But comics are like construction workers, dangling from the high girders. Once in a while, a great one falls, like last night. Remember when you first saw him.
Greetings, Bonzi. Remember me, Mork from Ork? You once called me the nutso from outer space.
I think I must be dreaming of something like that, you know? I mean, of course I'm dreaming. That's why Mary never heard of me.
Sorry, real thing. I had to zap your mind to make you forget. Didn't want you to go Bozo City.
When the lovable commit suicide, platitudes will flow. You hear people say, he had so much going for him and he was so funny, as if both prevent suicide. But clinical depression creates an added layer of self-loathing because to the outside world, you have all your parts, yet inside, you're broken. Williams was known for his demons, a romanticized label for addiction. Alcohol and drugs are the non-stigmatized remedy for depression. You're the life of the party if you drink, but unstable seeing a shrink. And while it's better to be rich than poor, money doesn't buffer you from affliction. So what does? Ask a happy person, and the answer is never, I'm happy because I'm a comedian. That's the rub with Williams. His job was absorbing the brutal absurdities of life and translating them for us, day in and day out, and that's really hard. Waxing sentimental is fine, but follow Mork's example instead. Think of the vets. Williams often performed for the troops. A veteran commits suicide almost every hour, or about 22 a day. They were not sad clowns, and they never will ever trend on Twitter. Williams understood that. We should too.
Good.
So there are so many entry points to his career that your age dictates the Robin Williams that you know. So at 49, it was Mork. What about you?
I remember Mork and Mindy, and I had a Nanu shirt.
Of course.
I could do the little thing. And their house was supposedly in Boulder, Colorado, and I grew up in Denver. And I actually believe that their house was in Boulder, and I thought it was kind of cool that we were all from Colorado. That's when I first knew him. Although, seeing that clip with the fawns, I remember that too.
Yeah.
I remember watching that on TV.
He started in Happy Days, Eric, and then he blew up from there because people wanted him back. When did you...
I don't remember the Happy Days.
Yes.
I don't remember that at all. Mork and Mindy, obviously, but... Man, some of the phenomenal movies he's been. What an actor! He had so many characters.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at one point in Aladdin, which is he was using his voice, he had 50 different characters during Aladdin. My favorite, by far, Birdcage. I just loved him in Birdcage.
Yes.
Jumanji. But for me, the best, Robin Williams was at his best when he was sitting with either Jay Leno or Johnny Carson or David Letterman and just vamping, just ad-libbing. It was phenomenal. It was just so much fun to watch.
Well, speaking of the films, let's just throw a montage and I'll get to the pair over here. Go.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Hello! Ah! Oh, I'm sorry to frighten you, dear. I must look like a yeti in this getup.
Excuse me? Are you looking at me? Did you rub my lamp? Did you wake me up? Did you bring me here? And all of a sudden you're walking out on me? I don't think so. You do. Fussy, fussy, fussy. You do. Martha Graham, Martha Graham, Martha Graham. Or Twyla, Twyla, Twyla. Or Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd. Or Madonna, Madonna, Madonna.
Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
I like that one.
What was your Robin Williams favorite, Andrea?
I'm with Eric on the Birdcage. I think he was so funny in that movie. It didn't make it as big as Good Will Hunting or the others, but I just thought his role was just hilarious. Mork and Mindy, because I had older siblings that watched the show. I remember being very little and hearing the Nanu Nanu. But Good Will Hunting, when he gives advice on that bench about love, that's one of the best scenes, I think, from any movie. And so it's very sad. But your monologue was really good, Greg. I mean, he didn't just show up and have to act. He had to show up in the face of mental illness and make people laugh, which is really hard to make people laugh regardless of what you're dealing with. But he had to do it battling depression, which is really hard. And if there is one silver lining, it's that people are talking more about depression. And it has become something more... not mainstream, but before it was very stigmatizing. And now people can actually have conversations about getting help and spotting the warning signs. And maybe the real reasons why people do this. I mean, one of my best friends, her mom committed suicide, and a couple of people said, well, that's a very selfish act, committing suicide. But people don't understand. They're dealing with a lot of mental health
they don't
issues.
see it as selfish.
They don't. They see it as
saving,
as a
relief.
Yeah, as a relief and sparing other people because they don't think they're worth staying around.
Yeah. Bob, bringing up the depression aspect and also the fact that he had drug issues which were well known, so well known. I think I made fun of him about it last week.
You did.
Do you suspect that the drugs lead to depression, or that depression leads to drugs as a form of self-medication or a combination?
The latter. By the way, I thought your monologue was excellent. And my favorite was Good Morning Vietnam, because it showed in there, you know, when he fell in love with that Vietnamese woman, and you know, you could see Robin Williams was a guy that was a sad man in many ways. You could see it. You could see the depression in him. But I think people who are depressed, look, of the people who commit suicide in this country, 40,000 a year, 20%, 25% are alcoholics or addicts. And generally, the reason for that is that alcohol and drugs take the pain away. I mean, it's the way that they can deal with it. And now he decided some years ago to decide to go cold turkey, which I find amazing. Very few people can do that. And I've only got to imagine what it would be like to have the depression come back in and not have access to alcohol and drugs for him. And then when he went back out again, I think he saw that as a great failure. But the guy was haunted, obviously, and which made him, in many ways, that's where his talent comes from.
Yeah. Now, we all heard about this like everybody else did last night, and Conan O'Brien actually informed his audience at the time, and then we're going to talk about our reaction to this here.
This is unusual and upsetting, but we got some news. During the show that Robin Williams has passed away, and it is absolutely shocking and horrifying and so upsetting on every level.
So, Dana, usually when something like this happens, you immediately think it's a hoax. Don't you kind of? It always shows up somewhere on Twitter, and it's kind of a
yes,
weird.
you have to kind of double check to make sure, but that's terrible news to hear.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sure that they knew each other and they were probably very good friends, and it's also very difficult news to deliver to the audience. So I think that's interesting is that what you saw in the media outpouring of everybody, whether it was on social media or on television, like we are doing now, is that we value people who can make us laugh, and then we mourn them because we think, well, now we're going to miss them so much because of all that they did for us. And it's very interesting in Hollywood how many people, just this year when we talked about Philip Seymour Hoffman, that whether it's the drugs or the depression that drives one another, that seemingly outside of Hollywood you think, gosh, these people have everything that they could ever want in life, but yet somehow they're extremely lonely and then so vulnerable that they decide to take their own lives.
Is it possible that not having everything you want, Eric, actually prevents you from thinking too much about the suffering?
No,
I don't know.
You talk about having everything, but this is a disease. It's a brain disease. You wouldn't ask someone how you have so much. How come you have cancer?
Right.
How dare you have cancer? Here's my question to you. People who are that funny, who really just tap into that sense of humor, the aggregate sense of humor, is there a dark side? Is it because they have a dark side?
I think it's. I mean, the comedians that I deal with a lot of them on Red Eye. By nature, they're always to come up with material.
Right.
They have to think about dark things. It's the weird, absurd parts of life that turn into great material, and the best comics are observational. And he went pretty far into the darker parts of his life and his world, and that might take a toll.
He went deep diving into those intricacies of people, of humanity. You know, and that was what was so funny. He'd make fun of it. He'd bring it out and say, "Ha, look at this," and that was his humor.
He really tried to help himself. He checked into Hazleton, the same place I went to get clean, and Hazleton has an excellent program for depression and alcoholism and drug addiction. And he went there for 2 months and then came back out. But then the problem, as it always is in this case, he took on a lot of work. And I think it's like Lindsay Lohan. You know, you just can't come off of these things and go right back into a whole lot of work and knowing full well that people are going to expect you to do very, very well. And I'm not sure he thought he could do that well.
Yeah. Andrea, people seem to think performers are more likely to commit suicide. And I looked this up. They actually do. I mean, musicians, authors, artists, and comics tend to. But what beats them are dentists. So what could you link depression or a suicidal ideation with performing?
I don't know. Dr. Brad Gorski is always in a charming mood when I'm around. I don't know if he's hitting the nitrous oxide or what. I mean, he doesn't have to deliver bad news to me. I haven't had a cavity in forever. I think fame has a lot to do with it, too, because, again, when you're in the public eye, right, you enjoy the public eye for the most part. Maybe he didn't. But you're looking to get awards and accolades and do what you love. If you're making people laugh, you get your feedback by making them laugh or delivering a great performance. So there's always the pressure to please all these other people, more so than regular folks that aren't famous. But celebrities, they have the same issues as everybody else. It's just heightened because everything they do is under a microscope. I think it's pretty incredible that Robin Williams, he didn't have a negative headline surrounding him. I mean, a lot of these guys have negative headlines, like bar brawls, and they do bad things, and they say really stupid things. He never did that. And he kind of got ahead of the people that may have said something negative about his addiction by putting it out there,
right.
Which I thought was really smart because then no one can criticize him because he says, look, I own this, I have a problem. Yeah. He even joked about going back to rehab for a tune-up. But I just think it's really hard if you're mentally ill, period, but to be in the public eye and the pressure to make people laugh, it could have been the reason.
Very few of those comedians who stand up there. I mean, you think about movies, you have the ability to have another take, right? They can do 5 takes, 10 takes. A comedian has to stand up there with a brick wall behind him and a microphone in his hand, and he's got to perform right away. Mm-hmm. And they're either going to laugh or they're not going to laugh. And a lot of them did go out there stoned because it was a way to kind of deal with and I think in a funny way, they're dark. They're also kind of, they're not really like people, as the ones that we went down to Dana's every night to a comedy club with a group of us, and I had a chance to talk to some of the comedians afterwards, and 2 of whom were alcoholics, and one guy particularly from Australia who had struggled with his demons, and still was, and he said that's the way it is in this business.
Well, I want to get to this before we go. This is a tape of Marin County officials discussing the cause of death. It's kind of grim.
The personal assistant was able to gain access to Mr. Williams' bedroom and entered the bedroom to find Mr. Williams clothed in a seated position, unresponsive, with a belt secured around his neck, with the other end of the belt wedged between the closed closet door and the door frame. The preliminary, and I again say preliminary, results of the forensic examination revealed supporting physical signs that Mr. Williams' life ended from asphyxia due to hanging.
Dana, listening to a press conference, when do we reach the "it's none of our business" threshold, or is there no longer
one? I think they crossed a line. I don't know why that couldn't have actually anything that the reporters are looking for their detail for their stories could have been done in a press release or in a statement from the coroner that made it very clear. I don't see the need to have a press conference like that for that kind of detail.
I guess maybe it's because there's just so many reporters there, right, Eric?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's a huge appetite for it. You look at the TV ratings last night; everything spiked when the news broke across all the venues. People want to know. I'm for more information. I wasn't bothered by it. I actually wanted to know. I think there's some indication of maybe a cut to a wrist and possibly some sort of note. I would like to know. I just want to know more.
600,000 people try to kill themselves every year in America, but try. I mean, they really maybe don't, but they go to emergency rooms. But, this goes down very much the impact, at least from my standpoint, of John Lennon and Princess Diana and Robin Williams. I mean, I put them all on the same level, and I think they had that kind of impact.
It's interesting, the different angles the day after. So the Washington Post took issue with the Academy for tweeting out a picture of his character as the genie and saying in a tweet, "Genie, you're free." And so there's been an editorial. The Washington Post is asking the question, is the suicide contagion?
Right.
Are we glorifying suicide? And so I think in the days to come, I find it interesting to see where the editorial angles go on this and people start to look at these different issues. But it is a pretty good question to ask. I mean, with a cartoon, and are we celebrating something that's very, very sad? And I don't know. I'm interested to see where it goes the next couple of days.
All right. Well, much more to come on the 5. But before we go, here's what Robin Williams hoped he'd find in the afterlife. Back in a moment.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
There's seating near the front. The concert begins at 5. It'll be Mozart, Elvis, and one of your choosing. Or just a nice, if heaven exists, to know that there's laughter. That would be a great thing.
Oh, yeah.
Just to hear God goes, 2 Jews walk into a bar.